And welcome back to Consumer Choice Radio, broadcasting here on the Big Talker, 106.7 FM and Sauga 960 AM in the Peel region of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I am joined for this hour for a good interview. It's unfortunately a repeat because we had technical issues last time, but we have Kirti Nuthi on. She is the public affairs. I believe you're not manager at Netchoice anymore. You told me you got an upgrade.
I'm
Is that
manager.
Right? Oh, you are the manager. Great. She's the public affairs manager at Netchoice, a great organization. You can see more of what they do over on their website. Plenty of defense of the great new creative economy and the great industrial, entrepreneurial startups that are really making a difference in their economy. Kirti, thanks so much for coming on Consumer Choice Radio.
No, thank you so much for having me.
So let's talk about consumers and antitrust. I want to get into the antitrust question because I know Senator Klobuchar is out there. She is with her own book making the case of why we need to be breaking up particular companies. And I think you probably saw this article, but she was teaming up with Tom Cotton. And there was actually this interesting revelation that they're calling for the breakup of Amazon and the larger companies. And actually headquartered in their respective states are, I believe, is it Walmart and is it Target? Is that right?
Yeah, Walmart and Target, good old Minnesota and Missouri.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about Senator Klobuchar's sort of antitrust acts, why she wants to grind that, and perhaps why that could be problematic to not just companies, but also users of many of these platforms that we rely on.
Yeah, so in the last 2-3 months, Senator Klobuchar has come out with two really major bills with regards to changing competition and how business works in America. They both have really long names: the American Innovation and Choice Online Act and the Platform Competition and Opportunity Act. So two very long, not easily acronymed bills, but essentially what both of them do is they try to take how America's free markets run and turn it on its head, changing competition policy in such a way that they really hyper target 5 businesses, 5 online businesses that I'm sure you and I both use on a semi-daily, semi-weekly basis. The names are household names at this point, but her entire point of view on it is American antitrust has failed. These companies who have provided free services, low-cost services, and like continuous innovation, we need to break them up because that specific set of businesses is not good enough and harms consumers. So she's built bill after bill, essentially trying to take down online businesses in what I would call anti-tech fervor, and to capitalize on the fact that sometimes businesses make bad decisions and we need to hold them to account.
Yeah. That we know that many of these companies make bad decisions. Does that mean that we need to use the government to break them up? Is kind of a whole other question. And related to that, I want to point to an article of yours in Fortune magazine. To protect American innovation, we must let websites keep moderating their own content. So this is very related because we're talking about the inner workings of many of these platforms. There are questions of Section 230, whether it should be repealed. The left and the right, they're coming together in a kumbaya moment. But you say this would actually be very dangerous. Talk of reopening Section 230. What is that about?
I think it's incredibly important that when we're talking about regulation in general, we try to make sure that big government doesn't mess it up. And what we're seeing is American antitrust legislation affecting content moderation, specifically how content moderation works, or tying Section 230, which seems like the big boogeyman right now, to antitrust, and saying that both of them together need to be one legislative proposal. In fighting antitrust, Congress on the House side didn't think about content moderation when they were building their antitrust proposals, and so essentially made content moderation almost something that had to be on the chopping block in their proposal. And so in that piece, I kind of argue that we need to split both of those. It's a clumsy approach to let antitrust affect content moderation and content moderation affect antitrust, because the fact that websites get to pick how they moderate inherently breeds competition amongst online websites. I go to Reddit for user-based moderation. There are like user moderators who track down subreddits and make sure that we enjoy them the way we want to. That doesn't happen on Instagram and that doesn't happen on TikTok. Those are completely different websites, with like TikTok being video focused. They have to really focus on images and videos. Instagram gets to do images and posts. And then you've got like Facebook and Twitter, which are just like all of it at once. I think that in and of itself is digital competition. There's digital innovation on what websites get to pick and choose on what content goes up and what content goes down, because of what they're picking gets to stay up. When we discuss potential antitrust violations, adding content moderation to the mix leads us to two big government approaches of like, over moderate it, Congress gets to tell us what goes online, including what we get to put online, or under moderation, and then every website becomes slightly not okay, like more 4chans, more 8chans, whatever that's called now, more unmoderated internet where, I don't know, but I wouldn't want a nephew or a niece of mine sitting on a website where everything is allowed. In the same way, I don't want to wake up in the morning and like scroll on an app where I'm seeing some very hateful speech. If antitrust gets involved, that could be the option.
I see. Yeah. And I mean, talking about how moderation works, I mean, there's very vibrant communities for this. I tried to submit a Bitcoin article to Reddit, and I'm just getting shredded by the comments saying there's no new information here, downvote, all this kind of stuff. It's like, guys, come on, please. I have a generational question: is Generation Z, or Z for our Canadian listeners, what is their kind of view, your kind of view on many of these platforms and what the laws should be? Because I think a lot of this is being driven in Washington. It's being driven by a lot of elite journalists who are in New York or DC and have a particular view and relationship with many of these platforms or with technology. But what of the younger generation? Do they hold these same views that we need to have antitrust, or that we should have more intense government scrutiny of all this online content moderation? What is that approach?
I'll say there's like two different points of view I have on this. As a social media manager, I have to use the platforms we're talking about, like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, hit target audiences that I have to use professionally. 530 hits, and I am not seen on these platforms, mostly because for me and for how I look at all of these legislative proposals as a Gen Z, the platforms in question are almost like already something I don't use. So it just doesn't even process as why we'd need to regulate them. I don't use Facebook very often outside of work. I don't use Twitter very often outside of work unless I want to spam the internet with my dog. And I barely use Instagram. I spend a lot of time on like TikTok and like Reddit, which I'm sure in 5 years, like the 12-year-olds now will be laughing at me and calling me old, because something else will come along. Like I remember when I was 12 and Tumblr was everything. And I had such a big Tumblr world. And now I don't even touch it in the same way that like when I was 12, I used Facebook. And now I open it once a day for work and don't open it for personal updates anymore in the same way I used it as a live blog in 2012.
Yeah.
It's
funny.
Yeah.
I actually just logged into my Tumblr yesterday to check on things, and we had all these followers, and I think what happened with Tumblr is, did they not get bought up by Yahoo?
They got bought by Yahoo.
Yeah, that's right. And there was always this idea, Yahoo controls too much of the internet. They have billions of dollars. And now we barely talk about Yahoo. I think Katie Couric is still on Yahoo, but
twice now.
Oh yeah, Oath. Yeah. And you're totally right about a lot of these platforms. And we did have conversations about TikTok about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. That was more so though about national security questions, about China's tech. Is that something that is, you believe, going to come back up in many of the congressional halls. Are we going to perhaps not talk about TikTok when it comes to breaking up the company? Because obviously they can't because it's China. But perhaps in national security concerns, blocking it, much like Trump tried to do. Do you think there's going to be a kind of move on TikTok? Because as far as I know, TikTok is still the fastest growing. I don't even know the user base now, but it's got to be pretty big.
I think it's like over 1 billion users now within like 2 years. I don't know. TikTok is one of those apps that I think is so special because it is like it and Musically, which I think is now dead, maybe, or has now turned into TikTok. I'm not entirely sure of the history there. It's incredibly unique. So like it is the only video focused user platform. Like we get to decide the content, the like what shows up on our screen, and it's entirely focused on the video in a way that no other platform is. Because of that, it has such a unique business proposition. As for the national security elements and everything, I'm sure there are foreign policy experts out there who have so much more to say on the ins and outs on why it's both good and bad. As it stands, it's such a unique content moderation model, content model that like, I really hope it sticks around. I don't see any other platform successfully doing what it does until it's a completely new startup.
Okay, you don't think the Instagram Reels would become popular enough to overtake it?
I thought it when it happened that maybe Instagram could do it. And then I really saw that like there's something unique about TikTok versus Instagram Reels for me, because like my Instagram Reels is stuff I've seen on TikTok 3 months ago. Something went wrong in that. And so now it's like the archive of another app, which is fascinating. And I think if it had more unique content on my Instagram, maybe I'd use it. But because I see all of it first on TikTok, I'm like, well, this one's cooler. Also, this one is just video content. I don't have to like filter through dog pictures and baby pictures to get to a video. I can just mindlessly scroll.
Yeah, and the cross-pollination part is very true, and we see that on Facebook as well. A lot of it is screenshots of tweets, so we're always interacting between all of these platforms. And as much as I'm trying to move all of my friends and everyone I know to Mastodon, to one of the instances that I run, it's hard, technologically. So I can see why TikTok is just super popular because it's easy. The next video plays. Yeah.
I think that's a great example of why competition is really thriving in this experience, in the sense of like, we don't just use Facebook, we don't just use TikTok, we don't just use Reddit. I have different like parts of my life on each of these apps now, because there isn't just like one true social media. So I get to pick where I spend my time that day. And maybe it is like 7 different social media platforms. And that's inherently robust competition that like breaking up some companies might take away.
We're speaking with Kirti Nuthi here on Consumer Choice Radio, Public Affairs Manager at Netchoice. I know you've got a couple of articles that you're cooking up, apart from all the busy legislative work that I know you have to do and trying to get these points across. What are some of the things that you're looking at writing about, or perhaps that we should be concerned about as consumers who are interested in these topics and want to make sure that we do have choice on the nets, as it were?
I think the big thing for me, and I think the big thing that I worry about for the internet come the end of 2021 to 2022 is Klobuchar and Grassley's bill. So Senator Klobuchar from Minnesota and Senator Grassley from Iowa have this bill that is so selectively targeted that it would just take down businesses of a very high market value and very high user/business user base, and ruin how those services work for small businesses, for consumers, for everybody. And the way that bill works is almost, it gives too much discretion to the Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice. And knowing American politics right now, giving like the government giving power to a bureaucratic agency that we don't elect, but our elected leaders elect and then vote on, really worries me, especially when like the terms of this bill are so vague. The chair of the FTC, or like the lead of the Department of Justice Antitrust Division, gets to decipher what terms like critical trading partner means in order to block businesses from doing what they do. So that won't just affect the businesses they're trying to hyper target. That won't just affect the internet. Like, it'll ruin the internet in the short term. The 5 to 10 years from now, that could affect so many different sectors of the economy that, like, I couldn't even predict where this bill could go. As long as a business uses the internet in some capacity and has users in some capacity on the internet, the discretion is just so large. That worries me, because that is a sign that antitrust reform to attack tech can affect the rest of the American economy, which means its global impact is very large.
Well, there you go. Okay, well, we look forward to that. Kirti, thanks so much for taking the time and being on Consumer Choice Radio.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.